We want to begin our special council meeting today, Tuesday, June 11th. Would you please rise, and I will ask Councilman Nickel if he would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join as we pledge allegiance to the flag of our great nation. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Nickel. At this time, we will go ahead and call for all public comment slips. If you do have a comment, we ask that you fill out a slip and hand it over to
the clerk.
The clerk. Okay, all right, the clerk. All right, our first person, public comment speaker is Sherry Bronstrap, followed by Mike Hartley, followed by Mona, I think it's Harnish. Sherry, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor and Common Council. My name is Sherry Bronstrup. I live in the 7th Ward. I have lived in San Bernardino all of my life. Our town is looking more and more like a ghost town or a war zone. There are many things I could talk to tonight, but I want to limit it to a few things. Particularly, please leave the libraries alone. And I'm asking you not to cut, fire, or eliminate any code positions or positions within the police department. Code is self-supporting as far as I know, and the police department, we need all the help and support we can get in this town. Don't fire, eliminate any of these jobs or potentially unfilled positions. We need all their support. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Mike Hartley. And maybe our AV crew, we're getting a lot of feedback, so if you could maybe adjust the mics, please. Mike Hartley, followed by Mona Harnish. Mr. Hartley?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mike Hartley, 3066 Parkside Drive, San Bernardino, resident of the city for 60 years. I was shocked and dismayed when I heard you planned on cutting certain elected officials' salaries by as much as 60%. I'm not a lawyer, but to me this is illegal, and if it isn't, it should be. Why isn't the mayor and his staff taking a 60% pay cut and the council taking a 60% pay cut? How about the acting police chief taking a 60% pay cut? This is all being done out of spite because certain people are not playing the mayor's games. Well, Mayor, there are a lot of the citizens who aren't playing the games you want to play. And it may not be today and it may not be tomorrow, but eventually you're going to lose at your own game. Now, at the same time, with cutting salaries, someone has come up with the thought of getting rid of code enforcement. This tells me none of you drive around the city, and if you say you do, then you're blind at what's in front of you. The fact that code brings in more revenue for the city than any other department tells me favors are being called in from all the slumlords that finance the mayor and some of the council members with campaign money. The revenue that the code enforcement generates for the city is obviously from the pockets of these slumlords, and they don't like that fact. Remember, in 2020, a lot of your seats will be up for grabs, and if you continue to bring this city down, you won't be sitting in that seat come 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mona Harnish, followed by Patrick Morris, followed by Treasurer Tees.
Hi, my name is Mona. I'm asking that you not cut the police department or code enforcement also. When other businesses are looking at cities to come to, safety is a top priority. Cutting that police department and endangering lives is not what we need to draw businesses to our area. Also, code enforcement does bring in money. We need to look at doing other things that can cut. And one, I'm sorry, is City Council. You're taking on new positions when others are asked to cut, and that's not right. You should be taking the same cuts anybody else is, but please leave our police department alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patrick Morris, followed by Hardy Brown, followed by Treasurer Tees.
Mr. Mayor, Common Council, I want to talk to you just for a moment about the proposal of the ad hoc committee to cut the salaries of 3 elected officials in this city. This proposal, in my view, is not only ill-advised, it is also unconstitutional. The question of the Constitution. The leading California Supreme Court case on the subject is one I am very familiar with. It's a 1980 case involving Governor Brown and the lawmakers' attempt to place caps on the future cost of living increases for judicial officers in California. It's called Olson versus Corey at 27 Cal 3rd, 532. I was a member of the judiciary at that time and therefore a plaintiff in this lawsuit. The court held that judicial salary benefits are vested at the moment of being sworn into office, and the right to that compensation cannot be eliminated or reduced during that term of office. To do so would be a violation of the contract clause of the state's constitution. The court said impairing a granted salary goes to the very heart of the employment contract. The court explained that a judge entering the office is deemed to do so, at least in part, in consideration of salary benefits then offered by the state at the moment of being sworn in, a vested contractual right, and may not be diminished during that term of office. The Olson case then stands for the general proposition that an elected official's compensation in California is vested as a contractual right at the moment he or she is sworn into office and may not be diminished during that term of office. There's also an AG opinion on the subject regarding a city council's question about reducing the salary of its members during their term. The AG follows the reasoning of the Olson case and opines that a city council may not reduce the salary of its members during their current term of office. Practically speaking, the ad hoc committee indicates a savings of about $200,000. You can expect, as a mayor and council, immediate lawsuit by these office holders asking the Superior Court for injunctive relief and a writ of mandate. I'm confident they will be successful in every aspect of their lawsuit, and the cost to the city will certainly be probably a lot more than the proposed savings that the ad hoc committee projects. You will pay your attorney's fees and costs. There may be depositions and interrogatories, and losing, you will pay the attorney's fees and cost for the office holders as well. And you will suffer the embarrassment, quite frankly, of having attempted to drive from office and diminish the professional stature and careers of distinguished public officials which we elected to these offices with the expectation that they would serve until the end of their elected terms. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Treasurer Ortiz, followed by Hardy Brown, followed by Esmeralda Negrete.
Council, I have a question for you. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You're really here thinking we're talking about a budget that an ad hoc committee thinks is going to save $200,000 when you had behind the scenes trying to give the chief of staff a $20,000 increase in his pay? He makes $94,000. You gave the PD over $430,000 in raises. This is about a budget? No, what this is about is retaliating against the city clerk because she controls public records and you want to control the information that comes out of this city. And it's wrong. Mr. Nickel, I've talked with you, I've spoken with you. You are a beacon of hope in this city because of your independence, your knowledge, and your intelligence in a train wreck of an administration right now. But lately when I see your quotes, that's not you. That's not the person that we look to for leadership. One, you were elected a whole 5 minutes ago and you walked out of a meeting, your second meeting you left when Councilwoman Sandra Ibarra was trying to put the animal shelter on the agenda. What is that? You talk about this being the public's meeting? You represent 35,000 members of that public and you get up and roll out. And Teddy, you don't need to be wearing a suit and tie. You need to wear a tracksuit the way you split when we found out there was still quorum here to put her item on the agenda. It's ridiculous. These games are so horribly annoying to watch. And not only that, the mark you're leaving on this city, the reputation you're putting out there. You can buy council seats, you can buy votes, but you know what you can't buy is the respect and loyalty of your constituency when your actions prove that you're inept, that you're corrupt, that you're liars, and that you don't give a damn about the people you're supposed to represent. 7 of you in an entire city is are just throwing an opportunity away to bring us out of a bankruptcy, bring us out of a recession, bring us out of a time and place when people look at San Bernardino like we're nothing. But how do we contribute to being something when you continually make us nothing out of your politics and greed because you think it's going to lead you to another position? Do you think ruining our city is going to make you a senator? A supervisor? You won't be a trash collector after this. Because we're watching and we're here, and it's not okay. You don't get to keep retaliating against other elected officials. Our city attorney, city clerk, and treasurer is equal to the mayor. You should be smart enough and knowledgeable enough to understand what you're doing. And if you don't, then get out. Because there are other people who are willing to work for the residents.
Our next speaker is Hardy Brown, followed by Esmeralda, followed by PJ.
We've also had a request from Mr. Brown to accommodate his disability should he not be able to speak within the 3-minute limit.
Hardy has written his comments, and he's asked me to read them. And he wants you to know that these are his comments. He doesn't want people to think that they're not. I want you to know, this is Hardy, I want you to know that I understand what you're going through when you have to cut budgets. I have experienced that from serving with the United Way, a manager at Kaiser, and on the school board. It's never easy. However, the first place a leader begins is within their department staff, and save only the critical functions that are necessary to conduct business. Having said that, you, Mayor and Council, should return your staffing level back to what it was before you became mayor. Our local, federal, and state office holders have enough outreach staff for you to stay in touch with them in Washington and Sacramento. I know from my own experience while serving on Congressman George Brown's staff. You voted last week not to fund the visual and performing arts programs unless they can match the dollars from corporations that are no longer here. How can they, since you've been running so many businesses out of the city from your lack of leadership and devious political games? You propose cutting libraries that are used by taxpayers, yet you want them to extend Measure Z. You want black taxpayers to support you, but fail to hire us in the police department. This same department takes over $17 million out of our city to other communities. The police say they're afraid to live here. Well, we have over 200,000 citizens that call San Bernardino home. Why can't our city workers live here? You need to explain why you are giving the police staff a 3.4% raise and everyone else gets a 7% cut from their budget. You need to explain why we are in this financial mess that you've created since you've called 10 special meetings since January, not to mention 2 regular monthly council meetings. I think you spent too much time on firing the city manager, too much time on hiring legislative staff, and not enough on city business. Mayor, you say we ought to support law enforcement. I have supported more law enforcement issues, such as fighting gangs in the city and county, more state propositions endorsed by law enforcement than any of you. So, Mayor, don't tell us that we do not support police. Before you hire this political firm to poll the citizens to extend Measure Z for police officers so they can carry the money out of San Bernardino, I want you to know my vote is no. You have demonstrated that you are better stewards of our money. You have not demonstrated that you're better stewards of our money. Now, before I will support to extend Measure Z next year, you have to do a better job.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Esmeralda, followed by PJ, followed by Robert Porter.
Good evening, and I hope that everyone can see this, every single person in the public, because what we have seen so far, there is no aligning, and when it comes to budgets and contracts, we don't see that there is actually a support or a follow-up with the City Municipal Code 3.0.0770. Not only that, but we have seen reductions of services and the proposed reductions of services, like the libraries. I've said it again, and I will remind every single person in our city. Many of us voted because we were made promises. And Teddy, you want to scold the council about not reading and what they know? Did you know that the promotions within the police department did not align with the 5-year plan? Because you should be reading that. You should probably be reading the City Municipal Code too. In addition to that, you have violated the Public Records Act with your intent to reduce our city clerk, and we're sure that you probably have someone in mind. So hopefully everyone has been following up on every single thing that you're doing wrong, all the false promises, and we can all work on a recall.
Our next speaker is PJ, followed by Robert Porter.
I have a written statement for the record. The city clerk has a copy for each of you, and any of you that you would like a copy of the statement. I'm PJ Saleska. I'm a retired disabled war veteran, lifetime San Bernardino resident. I'm a homeowner in Ward 7. I'm the spouse of Gigi Hanna, San Bernardino City Clerk. I took an oath to uphold, protect, and defend enemies, foreign and domestic. And so did you, Mayor, City Council. So guess what? My fund meter is pegged. I'm going to tell the truth what's going on here, okay? Here's what's going on. On 2 separate occasions, San Bernardino City Mayor John Valdivia attempted to bribe San Bernardino City Clerk Gigi Hanna. Okay? You tried to buy her off for her resignation. You can't get her to quit, so you think you're going to starve her out or force her resignation. That just isn't going to happen. Okay? All documented evidence, all contemporary notes, and everything has been turned over to the proper authorities. Did he tell you about this part, Henry? Huh? Did he tell you about this part, new guys? Huh? Did he? I can go on. Oh, he called her up to his donut shop after hours up on 40th and made her a proposition. She said no. He subsequently called her into the mayor's office and made multiple propositions. She said no. Okay? How many of you, all I need now that you know, all I need is one more of you to like this or support it. And now we've got a conspiracy. Okay? Who's in? Who's on board? Who's going down this rabbit hole with him? Gigi and I are claiming whistleblower protection. There's a whole lot more that's going to be exposed. We've had enough. No more. Not when you play these kind of games. Not when you charade retaliation and you try to besmirch and you bully and misogynistic assaults daily at work to effect this resignation on top of it. What say ye, Mayor? How about your resignation tonight, right now, today? Save the city, the recall, save the city, the media attention, save the city, your crookery. There's 3 things bring out monster in me. It's called bullying, bullshit, and crooks. And you are all 3. Be gone with yourself. This city is done with you. You are a temporary political hack. And y'all can follow him, you kangaroo council. Okay? Truth is as truth does, brother man. You can sit there and smirk all you want. Guess what? Got the receipts, brother. Goodbye.
Thank you. Robert Porter, followed by Linda Sands.
Anybody want a copy of my statement? I do. Send it to the DA. Send it. He's already been contacted. Send it.
Mr. Porter, please proceed.
Mayor, council, good people. Since I started coming to these meetings, I'm like way back in the day when Mayor Morse was here. I've seen the same exact thing that's happening now happen when the other team was in charge. The same thing. You got your charter changed, and now they're complaining that it's all messed up for them. Well, you all made the charter change. You forced it on us with a minority, with like 12,000 votes. I mean, you know how people are in San Bernardino, but you still forced our charter change. So I don't want to hear no complaining. Now, other stuff you're saying, I don't know anything about that. But what I can say is that for a long time, I sat here and complained to you all that about what was going on in the city, especially with monies and spending and getting rid of our fire department, all these things. And now look it, we're in a budget hole. I expect you all to work together to get out of this hole. Why? Because I don't want you to go bankrupt again. We just went through all that. That took forever to go through the bankruptcy court. We do not need that again. We need you to work together, Mr. Charette. We need you to work together. Please. This is serious stuff. We just had a bad shooting over there in Stater Brothers. People don't feel safe. We're going to have to figure out how to work together here and solve these problems. Even if I have to put a olive branch out and say, I'm sorry for anything I've done in the past, but can we please work together now? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Linda Sands, followed by Cora Mayer, followed by Tim Prince.
I am Linda Sines. My husband is Gary Sines, our city attorney, and I'm here today to express my extreme disappointment with this administration. Gary was elected city attorney in 2013 by the voters. The voters spoke. Since being elected during one of the most dismal times in our city's history, Gary had the task of getting us through and out of bankruptcy. He attended countless meetings with the bankruptcy judge in Reno, countless hearings in bankruptcy court in Riverside. He worked diligently with the city's bankruptcy team. He worked diligently on the plan of adjustment and diligently with the council and mayor. In addition, he attended every charter meeting and advised the charter committee in creating and drafting our new charter. In 2017, in Riverside Bankruptcy Court, Judge Jury declared our city out of bankruptcy. It was a great accomplishment and a great day of celebration. In July 2018, you, council, decided to contract out the city attorney's office without so much as a conversation with Gary. Now, with just over 8 months left in Gary's term, we're ready to vote to slash his salary in half. Do you really believe he is deserving of this? Do you really believe this is the right thing to do? Is this the kind of send-off Gary deserves? Outside of this administration, he has received nothing but accolades of thanks and praise. I have not heard one person complain about his job performance. And for what reason do you want to slash Gary's salary? According to the attachment to the agenda item, it is for legislative advocacy purposes. We have an $11.2 million deficit in our budget. I believe we have more pressing issues than hiring a legislative advocate. Does anybody in San Bernardino really believe that the Sacramento and Washington, D.C. politicians are concerned with us and that having a legislative advocate is going to make any difference whatsoever to our city? If council believes so, this legislative advocate should be funded with some source other than Gary's, Gigi's, or our treasurer's income. I want to be proud of San Bernardino, but as a citizen, mostly I'm disappointed and embarrassed. I'm disappointed with the mayor, who seems to be nothing but a power-hungry politician who has created divisiveness and is using his position as a stepping stone to further his political aspirations. And I'm embarrassed by our council people who are supposed to be representing us, but are merely the mayor's followers. Please reach into yourselves. Make a decision that is fair and decent and that you and your constituents can be proud of.
Our next speaker is Cora Meyer, followed by Tim Prince, followed by Barbara Babcock.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this time. My topic is a little bit different. I'm new to the budget process and struggled through what was shown, and I got stuck on the police department MOU. Having worked in the police department, it is hard to find and pay people to come work here and put themselves on the line. So I do not agree with cutting. I don't agree with cutting their salaries or anything like that. What I do disagree with is seeing in the MOU, which may be changed, I'm not sure, but it says that your retirement income is based on 1 year of service. Now, if you have a lieutenant who can be promoted to a higher rank, serves for 1 year, and he's going to spend the remainder of his retired year making that retirement benefit, I don't think that's right. My son in the United States Army, before he could apply to make captain, had to agree to serve 5 years in order to apply for the position. I want qualified, trained, wonderful people in our administration, in the police department. We need to cut the fat. This is what we owe for PERS, for CalPERS. We're paying for these people who got promoted for 1 year and are taking all the funds that should be for these people who are on the line now. So I disagree with that. I'd like you to look at that. We're paying money we should not be being paid for. I'd like to thank Gary. I've met you at other functions. This man is so dedicated. I just really feel badly for what's going on here. I thank the council seeing what is proposed for the library. I hope we'll still survive. That's a big, big thing for the city. Also, I was looking at the City of San Diego's test run for drones. We cannot afford to hire new people. Maybe technology. We're having more fireworks this year than I've ever experienced in 30 years in the city. We're going to have fires. And the quality, these are explosions. These are not firecrackers. How about drones not putting if they see a black and white coming, sure, they're gone. Send a little camera. I know it takes training, it takes money to do this, but it's not somebody's life. They're over there on a violent call. They're dealing with the public, but we can still find these property owners time after time after time, loud parties, week after week after week. If they know they can get away with it, they're not going to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Also want to make the announcement, if there's anybody here for a planning commission meeting, we know that this is the general assembly for a normal planning commission. So the meeting time is about 6 p.m. So if you're here for the planning commission meeting, the city manager, where are they meeting, or can staff?
Excuse me, they're meeting on the second floor in the conference room. So if you go downstairs from the elevator, go right into the double doors, and it's to the right.
So if you're here for the planning commission meeting, it is still going on, so just heads up. Mr. Prince, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Common Council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Prince. I'm a lifelong resident of this city and a 25-year-plus practicing attorney in San Bernardino. First of all, the easy one is please do not touch the libraries. The libraries are not an average city department. They have already cut to the bare bone. The branches need extended hours, not reduced hours, and we can't even think of closing that at a time where education is so critical in this city. If we want this economy to improve, we have to have access to materials to help that process. Look into partnerships with the schools to save money, not closing branches. On the salaries issue, this is not a new issue for San Bernardino. The issue has been decided by the courts. Former Mayor Morris pointed out a Supreme Court case. I would like to point out a local case by the name of Juanita Scott versus the Common Council of San Bernardino from 1994. That was a case instigated by the city attorney when they were trying to reduce his budget. The finding of that opinion was that you cannot, certainly not retaliate against a public official. That's completely illegal and outside the boundaries. And you cannot reduce a city officials' budget and salary below the point of a competitive salary necessary to attract a reasonable official. In this case, we have a city clerk who is already grossly undercompensated compared to her competition in other cities. And if anything, she deserves a salary increase. You can't touch her salary any more than it is. In the city attorney's case is a little different because the outside firm has already assumed a lot of the duties, but there's no reason why the city clerk cannot fully perform as city clerk. And for those of you that supported the charter, I think you're starting to see some of the concerns that some of us had with the new charter. It's hard to lose our elected city clerk, isn't it? The idea of a clerk that represents we the people is something we value now, isn't it? The idea of a city attorney who represents the people and is not beholden to a certain politician or group of politicians, very valuable, very much a part of this city's history. For 28 years, my father served as the elected city attorney, without scandal, without embarrassment. You know what? He was paid a fraction of what private attorneys make. Right, Mayor Morris? You make that sacrifice for public service. Gigi Hanna is making that sacrifice currently. Let's stand behind our city clerk, not cut salaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Babcock, followed by Valerie Litchman, followed by Mary Chartier. Ms. Babcock, welcome.
Welcome. Barbara Babcock, not a lifelong resident. Only been here for 13 years, but I love this city. And I hate to see what's happening to it. I did a public records request a couple days ago, and I haven't gotten all of them back. But one of the 3 that I received makes me think that we're looking at facing litigation for a hostile work environment. From Bill Asaley. Gigi, in order to prevent a recurrence of what happened last time, our position is that these requests need to go to the city attorney's office for review. They can pull emails out and make any necessary assertions of privileges or redactions. Once they've identified documents that are both responsive and subject to disclosure, our office will make a final review to confirm whether we have any other objections. Sorry, it's none of your business. It is none of your business, yours or Mr. Asaley. Gigi wrote back the same day, your office does not have a say in deciding what is releasable or not, but I do trust the city attorney's office to qualified to make that decision. And then he keeps going back. I'm not going to debate legal issues with you, Gigi. If we believe something is privileged or not otherwise disclosable, we will work with the city attorney's office. It's not how it works. There's a thing called whistleblower protection, and I've been involved in that. I've worked for the military, and I've worked for the Department of Defense. People need to be able to see what the heck is going on. And I am just sometimes ashamed of my city. And it's not just my viewpoint. I'm friends with most of the mayors in the surrounding areas. We're almost to the point of being a laughingstock in the Inland Empire. We need to get our act together, treat people fairly, do not harass people. The people will not stand for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Valerie Litchman, followed by Mary Chartier and Majid Siraj. Hi, Valerie. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and City Council and friends and neighbors here. I came to speak on behalf of the libraries. I'm sitting on the library board, and others before me have made a plea for the libraries, and I'm doing the same. This city has many poor people, as we know, and they really need the services of the library. We have a good leader in Ed over there, and we have a good team in the library. And I hope that you will see other places to cut rather than the libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary. Welcome, Mary.
I am asking you to vote in support of the library because libraries touch lives, especially of young people. I worked for a number of years at the Ingram branch. A young man, Sanjay, would come in after school at the Ingram Library. He would draw there. He went on to work at Disney and Pixar, and then he created a short film that went on to be nominated for an Academy Award. Ingram Library touched his life, as it did a young Hardy Jr. and a Paulette. Hardy is now on the County School Board of Trustees, and Paulette is a PhD professor at UCR and the publisher of the Inland Empire Voice. The San Bernardino Library touched the life of Alice, who is now a mezzo-soprano, singing on stages in San Francisco, Kansas City, and New York. The Roe Branch Library touched the life of Amy, who earned a PhD at Stanford and whose research helped farmers in the Napa Valley. The San Bernardino Library and branches have touched the lives of countless other young people and helped them to work towards their dreams. Please vote to keep the library and its branches open. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siraj, welcome.
Honorable Mayor, Council, Mr. Figueroa, welcome and congratulations. I think it is relevant to discuss cannabis licensing in the context of a budgetary crisis because these are both epic failures of the previous city manager. Now that Andrea Miller has been fired, let's not forget that she was the chief architect of a deeply flawed and corrupt cannabis licensing process. If 5 out of 7 council members agree that Ms. Miller was incompetent, potentially corrupt, and a liability for the city, then those 5 council members should also question her judgment, her fairness, and her objectivity about cannabis licensing here in the city as well. The city's own consultant, HDL's David McPherson, who's been here before you, recently went on the record by saying, the situation in San Bernardino stems from the city's failure to follow HDL's own procedures for evaluating cannabis business applications. This is David McPherson pointing the finger squarely at the city. The reality is that the city was misled and into approving licenses that exceeded the city manager's and the city council's statutory authority. The legitimacy of the entire process is now called into question. Next week, you'll be asked to clean up, cover up, and put a Band-Aid on Andrea Miller's hot mess by voting to bring those license holders who are not still compliant with the city's zoning or general plan into statutory compliance by drafting a new ordinance. Mr. Charette, you said, I'll repeat that, when Ms. Carvalho walked out of that room, you said, I hope I don't get in trouble by saying this, but you said in the final analysis, what we did wasn't right and what we did wasn't perfect. The city is far from being perfect, Mr. Charette. Let's make sure that the ordinance that is being drafted gets it right and allows additional compliant, qualified, and hardworking businesses an opportunity to do business here in the city of San Bernardino. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mayor, through the chair, I do have one email that I'd like to read as a public comment. This happens to be from a constituent in the 4th Ward named Mary Cox. She writes as follows, I am a caregiver 24/7, and I'm asking Mr. Charette to read my concerns into the record. Code enforcement is a revenue source for the city. The officers pay their own way and add at least $1 million to the general fund. Proposal calls, I think she means the proposal calls for 4 code officers to be fired and 2, let me read it verbatim, it's a little confusing. Proposal calls for 4 code officers and to fire 3 part-time officers. They service 225,000 residents. Why are you firing 3 part-time officers that bring income to the city. This does not make sense. Any outsourcing would be a disservice to the city. Signed, Mary Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Charette. I want to remind the public, those in attendance, that the Planning Commission meeting has been moved. So if you are here to hear any Planning Commission issues, it has been moved. If so, please indicate by raised hand, and we'll escort you down to the appropriate Planning Commission chambers. All right, very good. Seeing none. Let's move on to item number 1, proposed fiscal year 2019-20 operating budget review. Continued discussion. This is a discussion that we have had since the presentation made by staff on May 29th. This time, Ms. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, we went over these proposed strategies back on May 29th, and we're just going to do a summary to walk you through what those strategies were this evening. We proposed several budget reduction strategies. We provided some staff recommendations, and then I also want to go over the Economic Development Council's ad hoc committee's recommendations. We projected a deficit of $11.2 million, as you know, and staff provided recommendations from city departments to close that gap. Proposed budget and recommendations reviewed by the Economic Development Council ad hoc meeting. They met on May 30th and again on June 5th. The ad hoc committee members are Councilmember Nickel, who's the chair, Councilmember Sanchez, and Councilmember Figueroa. The ad hoc committee concurred with staff's recommendations presented on May 29th, which are in your book starting on page 13, and they also proposed some new strategies. The one they concurred with was our additional one to use the Cultural Development Fund for the library operations, $229,000, portion of Parks and Recreation operations, $91,800, and the Mayor's Annual State of the City, $20,000. And then staff also recommended elimination of the Visual and Performing Arts grants. That was $300,000. The ad hoc committee's recommendations are as follows. The elected city attorney to cap his combined salary and benefits for the remaining 9 months of his term at $100,000. The elected city clerk to cap her salary for 9 months at $32,000 and benefits for 9 months at $20,500. The elected city treasurer to cap the salary and benefits for 9 months at $5,000 total and eliminate health benefits and the auto phone allowance. And then they wanted to add $150,000 for legislative advocacy purposes. Councilman Nickel may have additional thoughts on that.
I'll recommend.
Okay. This is what that looks like when you put it on a chart, the actual numbers. After you take those expenditures into consideration, there would actually be a net savings of $56,000. The ad hoc committee also recommended including $60,000 for visual and performing arts grants from the Cultural Development Fund, with the condition that the applicant must provide matching funds and the criteria for award will factor in financial need for the applicant. Just a summary. I'll have Rita go over the summary of the budget reduction strategies.
Mayor, is this appropriate time to comment on the recommendation of the ad hoc committee? All right.
We just have a few more slides. This is just a summary then of if all the recommendations were approved, so staff recommendations, and if the ad hoc committee's recommendations were approved, the deficit would be, eliminated with about a $56,000 surplus. So I know it's kind of hard to see on there, and I also have it printed out for you. There was an adding mistake in the backup of the agenda, just in the last column, but you have it in your PowerPoint, and then here's a corrected page for you. And then the next steps are to get direction from the mayor and council tonight on what to incorporate into the final budget. And we have a public hearing and hopefully final budget adoption scheduled on June 19th.
Okay, very good. Thank you, staff. At this time, I'll recognize Councilman Nickel, who is chairman of the ad hoc committee. Mr. Nickel.
Excuse me.
I want to thank staff. It's never easy to cut budgets, and we have quite a few competing priorities in the city, and I want to extend my appreciation to staff and my colleagues, the public, for your input. This isn't an easy process, folks, and nothing we do up here in the context of our budget this year is going to be easy or pleasant. We've got, over the next year, a very short window of time to turn around a very dire fiscal situation. In my mind, cuts are not the answer. Growth is the answer. And this budget reflects the reality that we are having to face this year. We have a new charter. We are transitioning what was the prior structure of our government to a new structure. And that's hard too. And I don't necessarily disagree with some of the comments that were made this evening. This is tough. When the voters approved a new charter, they approved a new structure of government, and we now have the obligation to carry that out. And it is not pleasant. I do have some questions for our city attorney, but I think it would only be appropriate before I begin my questions that we recognize the city attorney and certainly the city clerk. If there are any comments, because I want to make sure my questions are appropriate given the context of the decision we're making. So if I may, Mayor, I would like to defer to both the city attorney and the city clerk for any comments they have and take that under consideration.
So, Ms. Hanna, if we could stop the clock for Mr. Nichols' time allocation of 5 minutes, we'll recognize the elected officials in question. Mr. City Attorney has 5 minutes. Ms. Hanna, you have 5 minutes.
Excuse me, Mayor, I don't believe that the 5-minute rule applies to the city attorney. I'm speaking to you not in my capacity as city attorney, but as an individual whose pay is being cut. We saw it up on there on the board. The $84,000 comes out of the city attorney's, out of Gary Sines' pocket. And I'll begin by saying that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Those are the words of Thomas Jefferson and are part of our nation's Declaration of Independence. Those words were true then. They are true today. Those words apply to the federal government. Those words apply to local government. Those words apply to city government in San Bernardino because those words describe the concept that was central to our nation's Declaration of Independence and because that same concept is central to addressing the issue before you today. Let me repeat them. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. In the matter before you tonight, City Council and Mayor are the government. The people of the City of San Bernardino are the governed. The consent of the governed relative to this matter comes via two forms. Number one, the charter. Number two, the election of the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city treasurer. My focus will be on the city attorney's compensation, though please keep in mind that my presentation can be applied to all three of said elected officials. Section 504 of the city's charter provides in part the city attorney shall serve as chief legal advisor to the council, the city manager, and all city departments, offices, and agencies, and shall represent the city in all legal proceedings, which means the city is the city attorney's client. And therefore, the city attorney has all the duties and obligations that all attorneys have to each of their clients. This consent of the governed, the charter, cannot be changed or dismissed by me, by BBK, by the mayor, by council, or by the mayor and council together. This consent, this charter, can only be changed by the governed, that is, the people of the city of San Bernardino. Likewise, the mayor and council are powerless to remove me from my position as city attorney. Again, only the governed, the people of the city of San Bernardino, can do that, as was the case in the removal of my predecessor from office via his recall in 2013. Ultimately, then, my role as your city attorney is found in the above quoted section of the charter. My job description, my duties, my authority, my obligation, my responsibilities are found in the charter. Mayor and council are powerless to change my role, duties, authority, obligation, and my responsibilities. Therefore, my role, duties, and responsibility are exactly the same now as they were before the city contracted with BBK. Again, not only have they not changed, but they cannot, by law, be changed. As this time last year before BBK contract, I was provided with an in-house staff of some 8 attorneys and an near equivalent of support staff for a total of approximately 7 to 18 staff members. That support staff changed by the council action of July 18th to 2 in-house support staff, Kimberly Green and Crystal Johnson, and the contract with BBK. So while the means by which my duties to the city have, So while the means by which my duties to the city are met have been so changed, my duties, role, and level of responsibility are exactly the same. The buck stops with Gary Sines. I am still city attorney of the city of San Bernardino, while BBK provides the chief assistant city attorney and assistant city attorney, performs the majority of the day-to-day functions of the office. BBK understands that the city's resolution to contract provides that Gary Sines is the ultimate city attorney authority. And while BBK is responsible for meeting its obligations under the contract, Gary Sines is ultimately responsible for filling the city attorney duties to the city. The top box of the city's current office organization chart reads, which was prepared by BBK, the top box is elected city attorney through March 2020. Again, such change cannot be made by anyone but the people of the city of San Bernardino. Further, California State Bar mandates certain high standards and levels of responsibility that each person practicing law in California owes to each client he or she represents. As long as the city is my client, I am bound by the State Bar to those high levels of responsibility to the city. I am a salaried elected officer. This means that the city and I have agreed upon a reasonable compensation level for my filling the role of city attorney as described in the charter. I am compensated for acting and filling the role of city attorney as defined in the charter, and I am compensated for acting by filling the role of city attorney as defined in the charter, not by the number of hours required to meet that responsibility. Whether I spend 50 hours or 30 hours, the compensation level is the same. The number of hours is not relevant. Rather, it is the level of authority and the high level of responsibility that justify my compensation. Again, my authority and level of responsibilities have not changed with the staffing of BBK. The buck still stops with Gary Sines. The mayor's chief of staff recently came to me and attempted to calculate a change in my compensation via some formula of hours times some dollar amount. Such an attempt demonstrates nothing but a complete lack of understanding of the role and responsibility of the city attorney. As attorney of record for the city in bankruptcy court, I presently have a high level of responsibility to both the bankruptcy court and to the city as its legal counsel of record.
Mr. Sines,
the termination of straddling by the city council means Gary Sines alone is responsible to the court and to the city. Likewise, in all case litigation currently pending, I am listed as city attorney of record, or as attorney of record, which means that I am responsible to both the court in which the action is pending and to the city.
Mr. Sines, your 5 minutes.
With respect to each such case. What 5 minutes is that, sir? Can you cite the rationale for that?
I'm trying to call it to your attention so we can have an orderly meeting.
Well, if I can review, you want me to read the portion of the resolution of the city which says that imposes a 5-minute restriction because it applies to council members.
Please, I'm just trying to remind you, Gary, about
I'm almost concluded.
That's fine.
Okay. I am disappointed with the so-called Economic Development Committee's recommendation, not only because of how it impacts me and my family, but because of how it failed to address or recommend any plan of action for the economic development. The chairman has spoken at the budget workshop that we need to focus on revenue. I expected the committee to seek the same. So I am bothered that instead, the recommendation is merely to chip away at the compensation of the city attorney, city clerk, and city treasurer elected by the people to address the city's $11 million deficit. If cuts to compensation are an acceptable way to address our budget woes, shouldn't cuts be across the board to council members, mayor, perhaps even to all staff? It remains a mystery to me how the committee believes singling out cuts to the city attorney, city clerk, and city treasurer and to no other elected officials or city employees is fair, just, or reasonable. And if council decides to accept this recommendation, I believe that each member who votes in favor is obligated to explain to the public just how they find it fair and just to make cuts to only these three. If council chooses to defy the voters, defy the law, and we've heard from two very respectable legal minds in our community for many years with respect to what the state of the law is relative to this action, if council chooses to defy, a court will address this issue at great cost to the city, including attorney's fees for those who seek the court's intervention, attorneys for the city, and all the other costs of litigation. And I predict in the end, the reductions in compensation will not be allowed. If you'd like to adjust my pay to a reasonable hourly wage, $300 an hour is a conservatively reasonable amount for an attorney with 40 years of experience. Last week, I worked over 36 hours, which equates to $10,800, extrapolated to an annual compensation of $561,000 in total compensation. More typically for me is a 25-hour week in the office, which extrapolates $386,000 total compensation annually. Also, you should be aware that if I were to retire and leave office today, cash out my earned and accrued leave bank would approximately be $25,000. Should you approve the proposed reduction, my cash out tomorrow will be $13,500. Your votes to reduce my compensation will result in an immediate loss to me and my family of over $11,000 in cash out value. You have recently terminated your previously celebrated city manager. Now you are contemplating drastically reducing compensation and slashing leave bank balances of 3 elected officials without any apparent rhyme or reason relative to their performance or their respective performance of their respective duties. In my case, I am not concerned that the level of my professional, without concern for that the level of my professional responsibility to my client will remain unchanged through the end of my term. The impact of such actions on the perception of the city, not only by our constituents, but by surrounding cities, by the county, the region, and beyond are unmeasurable. But I can assure you the motivation to invest, do business, live in, or visit San Bernardino is diminished with every such action. This is not to mention the impact that it has on our current staff and employees, their instability, their desire to seek employment elsewhere perhaps, and or most particularly the ability to recruit qualified, well-intended, dedicated employees that would otherwise be willing to come to a city like San Bernardino. Watching what's happening today and yesterday and perhaps probably tomorrow will deter them from even considering employment in San Bernardino. All of these things are very important to this city and need to be considered. I speak not from my personal interest alone. I speak from my love for this city and my desire to see it grow and to succeed. And I think that the actions and similar actions that have been taken are very detrimental to our city. And I think the public needs to speak louder and clearer with respect to how they see this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hanna, do you have any comments?
Thank you for this opportunity, Mayor and Council. On the advice of my legal counsel, I will not be commenting on this matter.
Mr. Nickel, you're recognized for the balance of your time.
Yeah, I do have a number of questions that have been raised in the course of the last few weeks. A lot of these have come from constituents wanting clarification of exactly what the terms of our charter mandate us to do, and some clarification in terms of some of the terms of office that have been identified. My understanding is I was elected, I think, the same election that. My term is up in 2020. Okay. Now, you were elected when?
I was reelected November of 2015.
Okay. And under the old charter, that term would have expired when?
My term runs through March. When
right.
Under the old charter, a new city attorney would have been elected in November and
Right.
in March, following, I'm out March 4th, I believe, and my term is up, and a new city attorney, if would have been elected, would come on
And
board.
I think my question is oriented towards Section 800 of the city charter. The second paragraph states that to facilitate the transition of elections from odd to even numbered years, consistent with the timing of elections for state and federal offices, the terms of the mayor and each council member in office at the time of the adoption of this charter shall be extended 1 year. It is silent upon the terms of any other elected officials that were in office at the time the charter was approved. Section 801 states, elective officers of the city shall consist of the mayor and 7 council members. It doesn't state any other elected officials. Section 504 of the city charter states, in full, a duly qualified city attorney shall be hired by a vote of the mayor and the entire council, as provided in 304 of this charter. The city attorney may be removed by the mayor and entire council in the same manner. We also have the issue of the fact that we now have a city attorney, a firm that has been hired to provide legal services, BB&K. The reality is the duties have been significantly reduced in terms of the city attorney. Yes.
That is incorrect, Council.
Okay. Well, I'm reading from the charter. I'm going by our charter as approved by the voters. If I may.
If I may interject, I remain the city attorney until the end of my term. As city attorney, I have high levels of responsibility simply by the fact that the city is my client and I'm responsible. There's an attorney in the room. He can probably let you know that the responsibility remains, and I am counsel of record. I have obligations to the state bar with respect to my client. So the levels of responsibility are the same. I think if BBK were present, they would indicate to you that they recognize Gary Sines as the city attorney, and that they are working in collaboration with the city attorney and not taking over the role of the city attorney.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think what we're trying to do is get a good sense of the fact that we have to be cognizant of costs in the city now. Like I say, this is not comfortable. I'm not saying, and this is no reflection on our city attorney. I think what I'm trying to do is face the reality that we have a new structure of government, and the city attorney services.
Mayor, through the chair.
Hold on. Transition.
Are we going with timers?
Hold on.
No, I mean, we're dealing with a budget, and we're all limited to 5 minutes.
I will.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I will conclude now. The compensation of both the mayor and council is now established by an advisory committee. And so our compensation is subject to the public will and is subject to a vote. I have yet to see anything that states that we do not have authority to adjust compensation, given the fact that we now have a new structure of government. And that is my concern. The other concern I have is that since 305 comes into effect mid-term for roughly half of the council members, it was stated there is a case here that finds it unconstitutional to change the compensation of an elected official while they are still in office. Does that mean that Section 305 is unconstitutional in the context of the California Constitution and case law? Mr. Sines.
I'd have to take a closer look at that, Council, to give you
my
a legal opinion.
Yeah,
I could have been asked that prior to the day's meeting. I could have been
in
prepared to respond to
conclusion,
that.
I think that there are aspects of our charter that clearly, in retrospect, we probably would have wanted to rethink. But now, in the context of our budget circumstances, I think we need to be brutally realistic now. And, well, it's subject to the compensation that's established in the charter. And so we've been through that process already.
You've talked around the.
So that concludes my
we're not
remarks.
going to engage
I
with the
appreciate it.
public.
You've
had
talked
your time.
around the issue of why you're cutting the respective
public,
electeds.
if you would rephrase-
There's no
Mr. Sines, you're
justification
out of order,
indicated.
sir. Just a
What's
minute.
the rationale? I'm still going to be here
Just
for
show
9
the
months.
budget.
I'm still here for 9 months, and you're cutting my pay.
Mr. Sines, just a minute. Public, we're asking for your cooperation. We have our police officer here. We're asking for your full cooperation to please not interrupt this business meeting. This is an important meeting. You've had your time. You're not going to interfere or interrupt this meeting. We'll take appropriate action that's necessary. Please, we're asking for your cooperation. Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor,
Miss Negrete, you're out of order. You're just
chair,
interrupting the meeting. Don't do that. So we're going to start with the council members here, and we're going to go down the line, and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to approve the recommendations made by the Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee with the additions. First, that we issue an RFP for body cam video processing. I know right now it's done through the police department. I want to see if that can be done through a private contractor. I want to direct staff that we put out an RFP for that work. And the second part is to set aside $339,000 from the asset forfeiture budget to pay for the contracted cameras, body cameras that the police are supposed to the police wear now, that would go out with the end of the contracted service period. Is that clear?
Mr. Sanchez, you're also recommending staff recommendations, ad hoc
So
recommendations.
no, that's the part I said. I said that at the very beginning. So I make a motion that we adopt the whole recommendation of the Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee, both for the moving the visual and development fund to fund the libraries and the parks, as well as
presented in the packet page.
as presented
Very
in the
good.
packet page, with the additions that staff put out an RFP for video processing of those body cameras, and pulling $339,000 from the asset forfeiture budget to pay for those cameras for an additional year.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Is there a motion to support that? Second to support that?
I'll second.
Any more comments, Mr. Sanchez? Ms. Ibarra? We'll come back to Mr. Sanchez. Any,
I have
comments?
several comments, and I would like to request that we not get timed, because this is the budget. This is going to set us up for this next fiscal year. If I may, Mayor, just make that recommendation that you do not time us while we're asking questions section per section. I have several questions.
Go ahead,
why don't
Ms.
you make a
Ibarra.
motion that we change that entirely?
Ms. Ibarra, go ahead.
No. Okay, so on the.
Give us back our
Mr.
unlimited
Charette, please let Ms. Ibarra use her time as she asks questions.
as much time as you need, Senator.
Okay, as far as the Economic Development Council Ad Hoc Committee recommendations, I'd like to find out first where the $2.4 million that we proposed for city attorney's office is from, if it's not from our own city attorney. That itself is questionable. I'd like our staff to answer that question, and that's just for the city attorney section. I have more questions for more.
I'm sorry, can you clarify your question? I didn't quite understand it.
Okay, on the ad hoc committee recommendation for budget reductions, it says, city attorney, proposed budget, this is the sheet we just received. Proposed budget is $2.4 million. Cuts, $84,700, which are coming from our city attorney. Where is that $2.4 million from? I made the math. BB&K has a retainer for $75,000 a month, which would make it to be $900,000 a year.
Councilmember Barr, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, that the number that you're referring to is the total city attorney budget, which is the BB&K retainer, but there's also outside attorneys in that budget too, outside legal services. So all the details in here under the city attorney tab, and you can see what those items are.
That's where all the contracts would be. Okay. All right, because I too would like to respect our elected officials. They're here for 9 more months. So that I wouldn't make a cut on our city attorney on that one. I would look into the contracts that we currently have instead of going at his salary. Next up, the city clerk. She too has her 9 months left, 128,000. And it doesn't make sense. I did the math for both elected city clerk for 9 months and appointed city clerk. There's a discrepancy in the monthly pays for those two positions. And I need clarification. For the city clerk, with the cut that we're proposing, we're putting her at about $5,800 a month. Whereas the appointed city clerk for only 3 months, we're budgeting for that person for 3 months, $17,500 per month. So if there can be a clarification, what makes the difference between an elected city clerk and an appointed city clerk? Our city clerk is certified and has every right to be here also throughout her term.
Well, keep in mind, I didn't come up with a recommendation, but they only made the recommendation to cut the elected city clerk. After that point, we would need a city clerk at the full salary in order to attract someone.
Okay, I'm not in favor of that one either. The other item we have here for the ad hoc committee recommendations, legislative advocacy. Honestly, to have our mayor, that's the head of the city and the image of the city, he serves as our legislative advocate. He talks to our state and federal leaders on our behalf, seeks any source of help. I don't know why he would need additional assistance. The other item, mayor's office, it says here that it's a 4% cut in their budget, which is false. That's only a 3% cut. And I would like to recommend that we don't have a use for our chief of staff, and that would help. That would help our mayor. That would help our mayor also be a leader and cut his budget by 7%. The other item I have is on the mayor's state of the city annual address, 20,000. That should be added actually to the mayor's proposed budget for 855,000. I did the math, if you guys want me to go through the math, but those are the changes I would want to see on this proposed ad hoc. Thank you. That would be my motion, to make those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Substitute motion?
Substitute motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is that it, Ms. Barr?
For right now, yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Figueroa, any comments, suggestions? Or we could come back to you.
No, I'll just keep it short. I am happy about the libraries. We do need to keep those open, so I'm thankful that we were able to work on that as well. I am concerned with code enforcement and the loss of code enforcement as well. I think that that's something that we in the future need to definitely keep a priority and fund that, because I do fear that what's happening in the city will get a little worse without code enforcement as well. So that's something that is difficult to deal with as far as cutting that is concerned.
My office has collected over $1 million in fines this fiscal year. That may be helpful information for you.
Okay. I don't. The state of the city, I actually see that as a community event, not really as a mayor's event. At least that's my interpretation of that point for that. That's all.
Mr. Charette.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say that the recommendation of our salaries is a recommendation. We can vote ourselves any amount we want. So what Mr. Nickel just said about a committee that makes a recommendation, that's true. It's a recommendation. And if we don't like it, we could be the city of Bell real quick, and we could raise our salaries to anything we want. So that's number one. Number two, and not in any particular order, I agree with my colleague here about code. We should not be cutting code at all. If anything, we should be increasing it and bolstering it and boosting it. I'm like a broken record on the 17 patrol officers that we have lost on the street, and we have gone heavy on the management in the police department. It's too heavy on the management side, and it does two things. It increases our cost day to day in our budget because those salaries are higher, and it increases our legacy costs with PERS. This year, our PERS payment, I believe, is $28 million. $28 million, folks, $28 million. You are not getting any benefit of that $28 million. That's going right straight to CalPERS to help fund our unfunded liability for employees. Now, I'm not disparaging employees or people that have a retirement coming, but it's out of whack, folks. It's out of whack. And if you take the $28 million from the $128 million budget, that means we got $100 million left to run this city. And the PD, I've had a hard time following the bouncing ball, but I think it's around $85 million. That tells me that our police department is 85% of our general fund budget. We have become a police state, and I'm the first one to support the police department and what they do. But I want it on the streets. I want people making calls. I want people to be in their cars driving, not sitting in some office up on 40th Street in the Stater Brothers Shopping Center. And that's what's going to happen. Folks, watch the call times. Just watch them. They are going to go up. It's now over 100 degrees outside. You watch them go up. So, and Miss Ibarra became my new best friend tonight. I don't know where that happened, but I'm thrilled, Sandra, and I support you 100%, and I appreciate everything that you're saying. And the mayor's office, my understanding, that was all sponsored, that big hoopla that we had for the installation of officers. I don't. And the charter has been reduced. And my colleagues agreed that we should reduce the salary of the mayor because of the reduced numbers, reduced responsibility. And we do not need a chief of staff. We need a full-time mayor that's working as the leader of a legislative body. And that's what needs to happen. I don't know if I've gone over my 5 minutes. Are we getting more time tonight for some reason? I've said I'm only at 3:30.
Yeah, you got a minute and a half. A minute and a half. You have a minute and a half, Mr. Charette.
I've got a minute and a half. I don't know what to say other than I'm appalled at what's been going on here since December 19th in this new administration. And it's wrong. And again, I'll make a comment about we shouldn't be having our budget workshop tonight because the 7th Ward isn't represented. We shouldn't be making any votes tonight because the 7th Ward isn't represented. We couldn't do that because the 3rd Ward wasn't represented, and I think staff knew that Mr. Mulvihill had a prior commitment that he couldn't make it. But I anticipate everything that is being recommended will pass. It looks like it's now going to pass 4-2 instead of 5-1. So we'll just see, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charette. Mr. Nickel, I think you've expired your time. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to keep my comments short also. I just want to make a comment and I just want to say that, with every administration change, there's change. And there's always, everybody has to be able to adapt to change. I sit here and I watch and I listen, and it really just frustrates me of being born and raised in the city of San Bernardino. Some of the things that are happening, some of the comments that are being made, a lot of the disrespect. And I just say that San Bernardino is better than that. I know that I went to San Bernardino High School with a lot of you people that are in the audience, and we're better than that. The disrespect has got to stop. This is a business meeting, and everybody sit up here and they talk about how that we're running away business, the council is running away business. If a businessman was coming to San Bernardino right now to this business meeting and heard some of the talk that's going on now, they'd walk out the door, and it had nothing to do with what the council said. It had everything to do with what the public said at the mic. So be aware of that and be conscious of what you have to say. I'm agreement that you have the right to say what you have to say, but don't think that businessmen are not coming just because of the council. This is a business meeting. So I just say that we need to respect. It's about a level of respect, and I'm going to leave that at that. And so I agree with the libraries. One of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting is that I agree the libraries need to stay the libraries. We definitely need our children to have access There's a lot of people that don't have access, and we definitely need that. I'm also concerned about the code enforcement, especially with what just happened the other night. You know, it's at State of, I'm not going to say the code enforcement could have prevented that, but when you look at all the other things where we're talking about the food trucks, we're talking about all the different changes that are happening in the state of California that we now have to be mindful of, and now we have to pass ordinances for. We're going to need code enforcement out there on the street, and we're going to need police officers out there on the street to monitor, to make sure that these ordinances are being followed. Otherwise, what's the point? So I'm very concerned about that. The part with the chief of staff, I disagree with that. I say that, you know what, every mayor in this whole city of San Bernardino since I've been here had a chief of staff. Every last one of them. And now you have a new mayor and you want to cut the chief of staff. I mean, my God, be for real. And so with that saying, I say let's go on, and, you know, I want to hear more. One of the things, the questions that I did have, before I forget, my question was to Henry and the committee. I just want to know what your rationale was for the proposed budget as to how you came up with the salary caps for the three elected officials. How you came up with that salary cap.
So actually, Mr. Asali, do you have comments on it? Or should we defer to the...
She's asking the committee.
So it was the chief of staff that came up with it.
Hold on, Mr.
Not
Charette.
the committee.
Mr. Charette, hold on, Mr. Charette.
Oh. So it
So,
wasn't the committee.
Mr. Charette, you're out of order. Just a minute, please. Mr. Charette. Mr. Charette.
Did you direct your question to
Mr.
Henry
Charette.
or to the chief of staff?
One of the things that I did say is about respect, and how can I expect the public to respect us
Mr.
if we
Charette.
don't respect
Okay, we're going
each
to take a
other?
5-minute. We'll take a 5-minute. Cool-off period, we're asking that council members are public also not engage. We're asking for your cooperation, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Saley?
Yes, thank you. To answer your question, when the ad hoc committee suggested reducing the compensation, we sought legal guidance from the chief assistant city attorney who provided that to the ad hoc committee. The only case on point that she located gave the opinion that the salary could not be so unreasonable as to no reasonable person would basically work that position. So with that parameter, the ad hoc committee requested some information from staff. There was a survey done, for example, on what other comparable cities pay for an appointed city attorney or city clerk, and I believe those were in the under $50,000. I'm sure this city manager can provide that information. But, excuse, I'm not done
An
speaking.
appointed city attorney is going to make $50,000 a year?
I said the city clerk. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
I'm sorry. The city clerk of Riverside makes $165.
Okay.
Appointed city. What does appointed city attorney make?
Mr. Sines.
So, based on that
Mr. Sines.
information, that information was provided to the ad hoc
Mr.
committee.
Charette.
I can let the chair of the committee explain how they got to those figures. Those were the parameters that were provided by staff, and it is the legal. It is our legal that the city council has the final say on compensation.
Ms. Ledoux.
Excuse me, maybe I misunderstood. Did I hear you say $50,000 for an appointed city attorney? That's what you're going to get one for?
I apologize. I misspoke. I said city clerk positions, appointed city clerks are typically paid under $50,000.
How about appointed city attorneys? How much are appointed city attorneys paid?
I don't have the information.
Well, the information is certain. Do you think it's under $100,000?
I'll let the
a year?
committee explain how they got
Do you
there.
think it's under $100,000 in your professional opinion?
I think $100,000 is sufficient for the work you provide.
For the work of an appointed city attorney?
It's not my decision. It's the ad hoc committee. So I'll defer.
How much time have you spent in my
Councilman
office that
Nichol.
you? I object to his testifying of what the work I provide is.
Thank you,
He
Mr.
hasn't
Sines.
spent 1 hour in my office, yet he's telling the council how much work I provide.
Okay.
What is this?
All right.
Where are
Well,
you coming from?
I did not
You are
provide-
misrepresenting to the council. That's a violation of your oath.
All right, so we have a substitute motion.
I'd like to make an alternate motion.
Hold on, Mr. Charette.
It wasn't a substitute.
Wait, I defer to Councilman Nichol as to how they got to those
Councilman
numbers.
Nichol,
I provided
any final comments
the
here so we can?
parameters.
Yeah, the committee met twice. The first time we met, the three committee members, and then we met with our acting finance officer and our city manager and one other member of the mayor's staff, Miss Erica Murphy. And basically, we looked at everything that we had available to us, folks. Nothing was left off the table. We wanted to look at every aspect of our budget, every little bit here and there we could perhaps trim, reduce. And it's not easy. Believe me, I have great respect for our city attorney. Gary I've known, we got elected at the same time. We've worked together. We went through a very rough process of bankruptcy. This is not easy. This is not easy. We looked at the fact that we were at the time going to cut libraries. We saw that we had a cultural development fund that could perhaps address that. We're also looking at other cities around us that, quite frankly, are doing an excellent job attracting state and federal money to their cities at a much better rate than we have historically, and have very good advocacy operations in their city. And we stood back and we said, what makes sense? And we proposed some cuts. But we knew that when you start diving into salaries of individuals, first of all, it's radioactive. I wouldn't want anybody diving into my salary, but the reality is the charter allows that. It's the way it works, so I've sort of learned to deal with that. But I understand. I understand the frustration, Gary, because you put in a lot of time here.
I'm not asking you to understand. I'm asking you how you
And I'm
arrived
getting
at
to
the
that,
amount.
if I may. I don't want to argue, Gary. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to kind of explain how we got
Perhaps
to
you
where we
should
are.
be here to argue because your
I
backup
don't want to
material
argue. I want to
is not
explain. I'm
logical.
going to explain. I'm going to explain. And the fact of the matter is we have a firm, BB&K, on board. We also looked at the functions of the city clerk. I'll be honest, there's some cities where the city clerk is more or less a figurehead, especially the elected city clerks, some of the appointed city clerks. They are. That was information that was presented to us. That's not to say necessarily that that's the case here. I mean, certainly if we want to keep time cards now, when they were elected officials, they didn't have to keep time cards. If they want to consider themselves employees, then yeah, we're going to have to track your time because
I'd be glad
at the
to
end
do
of the
that.
day, if I may finish, at the end of the day, the taxpayers pay all of our salaries here, all of ours. And we have to respect the taxpayers. And the fact of the matter is, the voters voted for this thing. Whether you like it or not, they voted for this charter in 2016. And it's hard to square what we had with what we now have. And we're trying to do that. And at the same time, give ourselves the tools we need to grow. None of the argument tonight was about growth. Everything was, how can I keep what I have? That's what everything about tonight has been. I'd love to have an argument about how we're going to grow. And the reality is, by investing in advocacy, we can do that. But, Gary, if you're putting in 40 hours a week, I mean, I'll be honest, here's what I'm getting from constituents.
Put it in 25.
They haven't seen you. You haven't been here for a lot of meetings, certainly since we hired BB&K. People look in the audience, they say, where's the city attorney?
The BBK's contract said they will be at every city council meeting, which means a
That's
redundancy
fine.
of service
Okay.
does not benefit the city.
And the fact
Me
of that,
sitting here
if you
next
want to
to
be a full-time, considered a full-time employee, then
you don't know how many hours I spend working. Just because you don't see me here at the dais is not the equivalent of me not
all
working.
I'm saying is we stood back and we looked at the fact that we have a new city charter that has an appointed city attorney. We have a firm that is now more or less doing the work of the city attorney.
No, that's not true.
The staff has been greatly diminished in the city attorney's office.
My staff has, but the work is still being carried
I
on,
understand.
the equivalent amount of work, and I am still a city
I
attorney
understand.
recognized by
I understand.
BBK.
And that's why we're having this discussion tonight,
and if
Gary,
you read
because we haven't voted yet.
And if you read the contract BBK, it says Gary Sines remains the city attorney, and BBK will work in collaboration with Gary Sines, the city attorney, until the expiration of his term.
Well, let's just let me ask you just a frank question. Is your workload the same today as it was before we hired BB&K? Yes or no?
My work.
Oh, it does matter. These are taxpayer dollars. Of course it matters, folks. These are taxpayer dollars.
The most significant issues that I deal with in my caseload are the same. I still have just as I indicated in my statement, my responsibility is exactly the same as it was prior to. I am the attorney of record. My client is the city.
Is the workload the same, yes or no?
The workload is the same in terms of me supervising and working with my staff. My staff now has changed. The hours are slightly different. My in-house hours are about 25 compared to about 40.
Okay. Okay, and what would that be comparatively in terms of your salary?
But the
And
work
what was
has
your
not been
salary
reduced.
before, and what should it be reduced now that you've got, your 25 hours versus 40 hours?
Well, if you want to adjust my salary, I've indicated some examples of what it might be.
Okay.
If you want to
Well,
go
let's
to
take
reasonable
what your
attorney's
salary was
compensation.
before. Let's do some math. What your salary was before
Well,
when you were putting in 40 hours a week. Now you're putting in 25.
No, that's not the equivalent.
Let's give the taxpayers the opportunity to be thoughtful of the fact it's their money. At the end of the day, it's
The
their
chair,
money.
we've gone past the 5 minute. He has not answered the question, and he won't
Oh, I
ask
did.
the question.
I think I
You
did.
didn't ask
All
the
right.
rationale. You
That
did
was
not.
it. Well, and what we're trying to
you
do is
won't
figure
ask
out
the
how
same
many
question
hours.
of the mayor under the new charter.
And then when we
if you're
finally
doing
got
this
some
now,
hours here.
what did you do before when you were in committee to come to the conclusion that you did?
Because
did you
we
do
haven't
any math?
seen you. Because we haven't seen you.
We
We haven't seen you, and we didn't want to cut it completely, and here's the thing, we didn't know before we engaged, we met first, we said there's probably going to need to be some cuts, and then we engaged with our legal counsel. They came in, we had quite a bit of discussion in that second meeting in terms of what would be a reasonable cut, given the circumstances that we knew at that time, the information that we had at that time, the facts we had at that time, and this is the number that we, in consultation with our legal counsel, came up with. Now, and it's based on workload. What we thought was a reasonable amount, given the amount of work that the city attorney now has under the new charter versus what the city attorney. Look, I'm not here to.
All right.
Look, I think we need some order. Can we have order?
Mayor.
Can we have
Mr.
order?
Charette.
I'd like to hear from
Mr.
the
Charette.
manager.
So,
Point
Mr.
of
Charette.
order. We need to have order.
Mr.
here.
Mr.
We
Charette.
need to have order.
Thank you.
So we did consult our legal counsel, and we did consult we had a group of us in the room, including the city manager, and I'll be honest, it wasn't an easy discussion, but based on the workload, given the fact these are transitioning positions, we said it's time to start winding them down, make sure they're paid a reasonable amount to get them through the balance of this 9-month period. But remember, this is for 9 months.
Who's opinion is reasonable?
This is what
It's a policy decision,
It's
Fred.
a policy decision.
It's a policy decision.
But I think there's.
You know,
There-
the thing is, what's reasonable
there's
for a
legal
council member
precedent
to
which
pay? The
requires
public
that
goes
it
through
be
the same
reasonable.
process. We have an
So it's not
advisory
simply,
board that
I
goes
mean,
through the same process.
you can't reduce me to a minimum wage, for example, because that's not
And we
reasonable.
aren't. And we aren't. And we
Well,
wouldn't.
It might be in that.
And we wouldn't.
I think an attorney in this area, just the most conservative, with 40 years' experience, would be 300.
Yeah.
200 would be more reasonable, but I don't think you're willing to give me 200 at 25 hours a week. Can you do the calculation quickly?
Well, I think what we're willing to do is wind down the position of the elected city attorney. And we're willing to recognize, if you want to come in less hours, that's fine, because we have BB&K now. We don't need the city attorney here that full amount of time. But what we do need is we do need to make sure we have an agenda focused on economic growth. That's what this committee was tasked with. And we need to ensure that we have advocacy. We need to ensure that we're backfilling. Could I have order, please? Could I have order, please? Could I have order, please?
Mayor, if
I will
may.
not continue unless there's order in this room. We have to have order. Okay, but I will conclude my remarks. We did meet. I think we did our due diligence. We had a lot of conversation. And quite honestly, I would hope that we can come to a conclusion tonight that's reasonable and puts the taxpayers first, puts the interests of the city and the interests of growing out of this mess we're in.
You should have asked
first.
me to come into the committee meeting if you wanted information from me rather than just doing it behind my back.
Well, we worked with assistant city, no, we did. Actually, no, wait a minute. We did ask for legal counsel. We did ask for legal counsel.
You should have asked for me. It was my salary on the board that you chopped.
Look, when we asked for legal
Why didn't
counsel,
you
if
ask
you're the
for me?
city attorney, why weren't you
didn't you ask
there?
for me? Nobody but me knows exactly how much work I do.
Well, then why
My
weren't
assistant
you
is not
there?
aware of all the work
We
I do.
asked for legal counsel to be there. I don't know. Should I pick up the phone and call you personally? When we asked for legal counsel,
that would have been a great idea.
When we
if
asked
we were
for
going to
legal,
cut your salary, would you want to be heard?
When we
by a
asked for
committee?
legal
Okay, I think
counsel,
you
we would
would.
expect the city attorney
why
to be
don't-
there.
Why don't we do, it's a policy decision, Mr. Charette, this is in our court, and we will make a policy.
The council's court.
Okay, the council's court, Mr. Charette. And it's a
I'd like to hear from my
policy,
city
it's a
manager.
policy decision, and then staff has made their presentation.
This is a budget issue.
Mr. Charette, you're out of order, sir. You
Mayor,
can't
may I?
just keep on talking, sir.
Mayor?
You're out of order. Chair will recognize Mr. Sanchez.
I'd like to make an alternate motion that we adopt the proposed budget as presented to us by staff, and the amendments made and the recommendations made by the Economic Development Council Ad Hoc Committee, as well as.
The substitute motion
Am I
on the
gonna-
floor
am I-
made
I can't
after that
talk?
motion.
All right, so I'm going to finish here.
Hold on, Mr.
I also
Charette.
want to direct staff that we set aside $339,000 from the asset forfeiture budget to pay for an additional year of the police body cameras, and direct staff that they write up an RFP looking for
Very good.
looking for
All right.
Come on.
Call for the
looking
question
for
if there's
a
a second.
contractor that will complete the video processing services that are required along with the body cameras.
Very good. Is there a second to that? Is there a second to that?
That was the original second.
Is that the
yes.
second to that?
So I'll second.
So the roll will be called on the alternate motion made by the council members.
Mayor, I still
Call
have.
the roll,
Let me,
Gigi.
I can
still
read the
had time,
motion
Mayor.
if you'd like.
No.
I still had time,
Or
Mayor.
the substitute motion.
Mr. Charette, you are out of order. You're out of order,
The
sir.
alternate motion made by
The clerk
Mr.
will call the roll
Sanchez.
on the alternate
The
motion.
clerk will read the motion
Please
first.
do so without any interruptions, Mr. Charette.
Mayor, before we take a vote, I still had comments.
The
So
substitute motion
before
is
we
the one
take
on
a
the
vote,
floor.
I had more comments.
We are ready to call for the question.
I
We have had
time
enough.
available, Mayor.
On the alternate motion, which was made by Mr. Sanchez, it was seconded by Mr. Figueroa, was to approve the staff budget as presented, as well as the recommendation of the Ad hoc Development Committee as presented, authorize the release of an RFP for video processing of body cams, and commit $339,000 from the asset forfeiture fund to pay for body cameras for an additional year.
That was the first motion.
No, the first motion did not have the staff budget as well as the
That's right.
economic
Call the
development.
We will
That's the
call
difference.
And I had the alternate also.
And you wanted to make an,
Ms. Hannah, will you call the roll, please, on the alternate motion made by Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Figueroa?
Mr., I defer to the city attorney on that.
You want to make a substitute motion?
I did earlier, and it was seconded.
Right, but there's an alternate, so
So you have to make it
alternates
again.
are recognized.
Mr. Sanchez?
This is on the alternate motion made by.
Exactly,
Correct.
the one that I read.
That's right.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Ibarra?
No.
Mr. Figueroa? Mr. Charette?
You might be surprised, but I say no.
Who'd be surprised? Mr. Nickel?
Yes.
And Ms. Richard?
Yes.
It's a 3-3 vote.
It's a what?
3-3 vote?
It's a 3-3 vote?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, who did I miss? 1, 2,
Miss-
3,
Miss-
4,
Miss Hannah,
5,
would you-
6.
It's a 4-2.
It's a 4-2 vote.
Mr. Mulvihill's not here.
It's a 4-2 vote.
I'm sorry. You're right. I do apologize.
Moving on to item number 2, the motion passes on motion number 1. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. The item number 2, the presentation of fiscal year 2019. Ms. Ledoux.
I'll turn it over to Alex Keisha, who'll be giving you the presentation tonight. I'm wrong, it's going to start with Rita.
Switching gears. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight, Alex Keisha, the Acting Public Works Director, and myself, to present to you the 2019-2020 CIP budget and 5-year plan. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice. We're going to do this in 2 parts. First, I'm going to give just an overview of the document itself and talk about the sources of funding. And then Mr. Kishto will take over and discuss the status of the 18-19 projects, the projects that are ongoing right now. And then he can kind of touch on the bigger projects by category, and then we can have discussion and questions about any individual projects or any other questions you have. So the document itself has a section called Overview, and in the overview is the transmittal, the message from the city manager, and then the narrative, which is kind of more of a discussion about what's in the CIP and explains the sources of funding and gives you some definition of terms. Also in that section is summary information that provides the projects by program category and then also by funding source, so you can see them both different ways. There's a tab called Overview. The proposed expenditures by category are broken down into the categories you see on the overhead: landfill, parks, storm drain, streets, traffic controls. Total projects for 1920 total about $28.3 million. You'll see that there's not a tab this year for general buildings. Normally, the general fund is a source for those type of projects. Given the situation with the general fund, we didn't include any projects this year. You will remember in the current year, you allocated $4 million from the general fund reserve for those type of projects. But for next year, there's no allocation. There's a tab in your CIP document at the very end labeled unfunded from 18-19. It shows there were, if you recall, there were a number of projects that were identified for 18-19, but there was actually no funding for them except for the $4 million that you allocated as part of your reserve policy. So we included those in there just so that you're aware those didn't get done. And then we just want to remind you that there's an estimated $210 million in deferred street repair maintenance and $195 million for repair upgrades of city facilities that aren't itemized in that list. When the facilities assessment was done, you got an overview of that at that time. And then Alex, there's also a tab entitled Prior Year Update, which Alex can give you an update on the current projects. And then there's a glossary. Most of the projects in your CIP are funded by restricted funds, meaning the funds can only be used for certain specific things. The biggest source of funding for 1920 is development impact fee funds. We call those DIF funds. Any of those projects are tied to a Nexus study that was done. They're to help offset the effects of development in the city. So when a new development goes in, the developers pay a fee, and that fee is to mitigate impacts that might be caused to the city from their development. State and federal grants. There's the recent highway safety improvement grant for $10 million. And then there's another grant for safe streets and bicycle paths, I think, which Alex will be talking about. SB1 is the gas tax money, not the regular gas tax money that we use for operations, but the new gas tax money. That, I believe that plan already came to you in a previous agenda that had to be approved before it was submitted to the state. And then again, my note that there's no general fund projects included in the 1920 CIP. This chart just gives you an idea of the sources of funding. So you can see that the biggest source of funding is the big blue piece of the pie, which is the regional circulation DIF. That's developer impact fees that are collected for impacts to traffic circulation caused by our developments and developments in the area and impact that they'll have. The second biggest piece is the SB1 money. There's Measure I, local circulation, and the grants I talked about, CDBG, which you've seen. And then there's a big $5 million allocation related to the Waterman landfill. Again, the categories that Alex will be going over: streets, landfill, traffic controls, storm drain, parks. In your CIP document, there's a tab for each of those. It shows the projects being proposed for 1920. It also shows 5 years out what they're projecting to spend in those areas too. Of course, every year those will come forward to you for approval. And there's also a column in each of those sections that show prior year funding for any projects that are on there, so you can get an idea of the total cost of what a project cost in entirety, because a lot of CIP projects are multi-year. And then again, the use of the CIP funds, you can show the biggest chunk is going towards street rehab, maintenance, repairs, and then the Waterman landfill, and then traffic controls is the third highest. And a lot of that, I believe, comes from the HSIP grant. So with that, I'll turn it over to our acting Public Works Director, and he is going to start with an update or answer any questions you have for projects that are currently going on. It's on page 93 of the actual CIP book. I'm not sure what page that is in your agenda packet, but if you're looking at your book, it's page 93. There's 63 projects, 23 have been completed, 27 are underway, and then there were 3 that were removed. And I'll turn it over to Alex.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, page 93 in your packet is addressing the CIP project that we have for the 1819. For the 1819 CIP, we had 63 projects that was allocated. Out of these 63 projects, we have 23 projects that's been completed. There is 27 projects underway into various stages, meaning some in construction, some in design, and some in planning. And there was 3 deleted projects that is from the CIP of last year. On the landfill for the next year CIP, we're talking about 1920 at this point. In the landfill area, we have 1 project for the Waterman landfill, and it's to upgrade the vapor system that we have installed there. It's a $10 million project that is going to be spread over 2 years, which is $5 million will be for this allocated year and $5 million for the next year.
Mr. Kishta?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ledoux, really, I've worked with my staff on this item, especially the $10 million over 2 years. It's about a 15 acre city-owned landfill.
Closed landfill.
Yeah, closed landfill. We used to dump our trash there back in the 40s through the early 70s. This landfill, I know it very well because it was in my old council district. So I know it. It's right behind station number 12, right there on Waterman, right by the Sizzler, behind Waterman and Carnegie or Vanderbilt. My point is, I'm just talking to council members now. This is a policy decision that we will have to entertain. We could save $10 million, folks. The potentials are that we could sell this piece of land. That we could sell this piece of land. It would take some bold action from this council, but this is a revenue generator. The $10 million that we are obligated via the new restrictions with the looming laws that affect municipalities, air quality, water, et cetera. If we were to sell this and amortize a sale and a win on this, would we then not be obligated to improve it with these $10 million of city money?
That's not a question we can answer tonight. We'd have to get a legal opinion, do an analysis on that.
If you could, please, because this is a good potential for us to say, hey, you know what? We're going to walk away from this bad apple, and we will sell it. I have, as a councilman over the years, have had several developers approach me. In fact, Top Golf was very interested. We can't improve the land because the mitigation efforts are too costly, and so it wouldn't pencil in. But if we were to have non-residential use, storage yards, storage facility, Top Golf, recreation, soccer, well, maybe not soccer, but
parking lots.
Parking lots, somehow we could really, I think, capitalize here rather than shoot $10 million down the drain, folks. I'm just saying. So if staff could maybe research some options there. Thank you.
Okay. Just to continue, in the Parks Department, we have 4 projects that has been proposed for the year 2019-20 at a total of $1.58 million. Most of the funding for these projects are come from CDBG funds and from parkland funds. And for the storm drains, we have 6 projects over the 5 years, total of $6.8 million. 3 projects in the 2019-20, total is $1.6 million. And that is, as you see, there is the three of that Barron Basin and the annual storm drain upgrades, and then the Sierra Way storm drain. In the streets, we have 24 projects over the 5 years, total of $37,044,585,000. 22 projects in 1920, total at $17,139,000. The larger project that is highlighted in this slide, the ATP cycle, which is the Safe Route to School grant that we got from the state, that's total at $2.195 million. The Mount Vernon Bridge replacement, that is project that is in the book and remain, and the SBCTA are the project managers on behalf of the city, and we are paying only for their management time at this point in time. Second Street Bridge at Worm Creek, that is to be replaced. And then the 40th Street widening, Edge Street widening from Kendall to 40th, and a State Street extension, and various street rehabs that we're going to be funding by SB1 fund that the City Council have looked at these and approved in a prior meeting. On the traffic controls, we have 16 projects over the 5 years, total about $13 million. Partial funding requested for all 16 in the year 2019-20, total at about $3 million. And that is also we're going to be starting the design on the $10 million that grant that we got from the state to upgrade all the signal lights that we have in the city. With that, this concludes the staff presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Kishta, I appreciate the staff. Thank you very much. Your team has always been very diligent and excellent in presenting. How I see this is capital improvement plan really are the tangible effects of city government. City government is responsible to provide those street improvements, the sidewalk, the ADA access issues that many of our constituents call City Council and the Mayor's office regarding. Many of the call center complaints that we receive are the tree trimming issues, things that are tangible that residents can enjoy, and so this is a good step in the right direction. There is a 1-year CIP and the 5-year CIP. This is a 1-year CIP that is buckled into the overall. I'm glad to see that there's nearly $28 million here appropriated for public works. From the position of the Mayor's office, I'm always very, very conscientious of the items affecting the quality of life for our transit corridors, ensuring that we have those pavement rehabilitation efforts, the street improvements, those are critical keys. I want to encourage that council members please work with staff on their issue, either via email or conference or per the direction and arrangement of the city manager, as to how we can make sure that our city remains focused on service delivery for street improvements. I'm very also glad to see that we have the lion's share as presented in the budget breakout on packet page number 11, or I guess it's in the transmittal letter. The percentage breakout for streets is 60%. $17.139 million will be spent on streets. My question to you, Mr. Kishta, is when residents, neighborhood council presidents, community members, PTA presidents, when they hear that, they anticipate bold action now. And the sad reality is that sometimes government has a process. So walk us through, is that $17.1 million going to be, are we going to have asphalt tomorrow by the end of the fiscal year? Give us kind of a roadmap as to how we expend that and walk us through kind of those commitments from our public works and the bill design and et cetera.
I'll be glad to. Usually, after the City Council adopt the CIP project, the CIP list, the 5 years, and then we start on the project for the planning. First, what we start is to strategy into bundling these into one item. Most of the time going to be spent, for example, on the project that is approved by Measure I. What we'll do is we'll do the design. Usually, we send another request for proposal for design, for a design consultant that comes in and give us proposal to do the design. We do the design. Usually that is about 4 to 6 month effort. And then after that, we advertise the project for bidding.
Is that per street or a bundled number of streets?
We bundle it so we can get the best money. The best for our buck is to bundle them into one project just to make it, we can get better bids on these, on the items. So then after that, we come to the council and we tell you that, okay, we have the project, this is what we bid, this is what the money we have, and this is how we're going to budget it. And then when the council approve it, usually after the council approval, a month to 45 days, and they can start the work. And usually we give them a time limit and how long they're going to do the work. So we're looking at sometimes 120 days, sometimes 90 days. So from the start to from the beginning of the project till the end, construction, we're looking at about 8 to 9 months.
On the transmittal, thank you. Transmittal letter, there's an overview, and I highlighted the local circulation fee fund, and this is what staff has reported as a glossary of terms. Circulation systems project that when constructed, they will improve traffic circulation generally within the boundaries of the city of San Bernardino. An example would be a traffic signal at the intersection of two arterials. My question is there any nexus for us to also include a heavy use or heavy equipment or a truck fee bundled into this local circulation fee? And if so, how can we expedite that process so that we also have, is it legal? Can we do it?
We need to look into that.
Exactly. We need to do an analysis. I don't know.
All right. I'd ask that staff look in, we're just trying to create revenue. We understand that we do get trucker complaints and issues, especially in the southwesterly portion of the city. There are several corridors that, while we appreciate our trucking industry, we also know that they degrade and have an impact on city streets. And so we need to make sure that our nexus for assessing a fee is certainly within legal parameters. All right, at this time, thank you, Mr. Kishta. I have some more questions. I won't hog up all the time. We'll go by Council Ward. If comments, suggestions, questions, Councilman Sanchez.
There's only one simple question right here. Packet page 150. We're looking at the project description for the Public Works Yard Improvements and Administration Building. I know we had given direction to staff to take a look at this option for this fiscal year. It seems to be unfunded. Are you? To be honest, I don't think we should be even funding it this year, considering.
It remains unfunded.
Okay, all right. That was my only concern.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes, for, I don't know the page number, but it's in the tab called Overview, and it's, I guess, page 20, Roman numeral 20, or 21, I mean. The water fund, I know we had, earlier this year, we had approved for the Muscopiabi median to be made, and it's not on the list. Is there a reason why it's not on the list?
Yeah, I apologize for forgetting about this important project too. We are doing the project with Water Fund, and the reason why it's not showing in your capital improvement projects, because we send the invoice directly to the water department and they pay the contractor. So that's why it's not coming out of our budget. It's coming from there.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it is going to be done as we approve.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then I think I had, as far as streets go, and it's 10, 11, Roman numeral 13 on the same area. There's several streets that I had reported that are in very poor condition and had to be redone, and they're not listed here at all within the next 5 years, it seems like, and I also want to know where they stand. Some examples I reported were Virginia between G and H. I reported Acacia between Baseline and 11th. I reported 16th Street, and several of my constituents, I reported 16th Street between Waterman and Sierra. And then on Highland, right when you exit off the 259, that little area under the bridge is in very bad condition. So I just want to know where these, and I have reported, I believe I reported Highland to Caltrans, and they said they got it taken care of. I don't know how they did, or they didn't give me an update, so I don't know if they notified the city about it, if it's our portion to take care of. It needs to be on the list. But those are the streets that I'm worried about in the second ward right now.
Councilmember Barr, we certainly understand, we have $210 million worth of infrastructure that needs to be improved, so we had to prioritize, so they can't all be on the list. We have limited funding. These are the ones that are being recommended tonight.
Because I see dire need for these streets in this area, so
Mr. Kishta, maybe what we could do is allow or assist Councilmember Ibarra sit with conference on you with the direction of the city manager on the pavement management plan, and we can talk her through and walk her through what pavement management plans, the gradations, and the need. And you have a technical advice piece that you use. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's called the pavement assessment plan, pavement management plan.
Pavement management plan, yes.
All right. So maybe what we could do is sit with council member and work with her on some of her issues.
If you don't mind me answer just the questions. What are we doing right now is the effort is to prevent the streets from going to be reconstructed. The streets that you have mentioned is in need to be completely reconstructed, and it's not a preventive maintenance. We explained before to the council that is for me to prevent the street from going to be bad. If I need to slurry seal it, it's costing me 16 cents square foot. If I need to grind and overlay, which is most of the streets that you have in this, it's going to cost us about $1.50. And if I need to completely reconstruct it, which is the street that you just mentioned, is $10 a square foot. So we need to allocate our money to see if we can prevent the streets from going to be in the same status that the street that you mentioned. But we will look into it.
Okay, so in the meantime, though, with these streets that are being the way that they are, they're not safe for our community.
Understandable.
Are we looking into grants? And Mayor, are we reaching out to our state legislators and federal to get funding to fix this? These are really, they are in really bad shape. I'm not exaggerating when I go through those. So I'm just advocating for the second ward because these streets have been neglected for so many years already. So.
Councilmember, I appreciate your passion for it. I understand. Sometimes I remember those days where I had to fight as a city councilman to dogpile on resources, get those resources in the district, and make sure that staff knew. So, yeah, you have my commitment, Sandra. I will work with you. I will be in Sacramento Wednesday through Friday, and certainly bring up conversations on the need for road repairs in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes, on packet page 113, which is actually page 48 of the project sheet there, we have Pepper Avenue rehabilitation from Baseline Road to Mill Street.
Yes.
And then a few pages later, page 50, which is packet page 115, we have a citywide street assessment. This is a new project that is not started yet. How? I guess the question is, how were the street rehabs chosen without the street-wide assessment?
Well, we have a pavement management system at this time, but this is just to upgrade that we have, and we needed like to hire a consultant.
Packet page 113 and 15, sorry. It would be page 48 and 50 of the, okay, sorry about that.
Let me address 48. Let me address Pepper Street first. Pepper Avenue is it's a shared jurisdiction between the city of San Bernardino and the city of Rialto, and we were approached by the city of Rialto if we can go into a co-op agreement so we can start design and construct that segment of the street from Mill to Baseline, I believe, and then the 200,000 that you see in here. That is, we are proposing for this next year is to start the design on that. So we're going to be putting 200, and Rialto going to put 200, and we're going to design it together. The city of San Bernardino is going to be the lead on this project, so we're going to be designing and constructing that. So after we determine what is the total cost for it, then we come back in the next year and allocate the money for that. Okay. In regard to the segments, that is the study that we have at this point of time is there is a lot of studies that have been done, but never been updated in the system. So what we're looking for is a consultant to come and make sure that that our system is right. Okay. That is what it's for.
Okay. And if I may advocate, much like my colleague, Councilmember Ibarra, there are streets in the Third Ward specifically, and I'm sure we all have the same story.
Yes.
Specifically in the Victoria Elementary area, Hart, Gold, Davidson, Colston. I believe you can almost, you can send astronauts to train how to drive on the surface of the moon, driving on some of these streets. That's how bad they are. Please, those streets really need to be assessed as well. So if I may advocate alongside my colleague here, that area, the Victoria Elementary area, is in dire need. Of the Gold Street, Hart Street, the south east portion of the city near the where the Costco area is, into that area. Thank you.
And Mr. Kishta, you and I had a conversation regarding just that area.
Yes.
regarding some of the, SBCTA Metrolink is expanding the Arrow line to Redlands. And
Yes,
some of the
this-
rail
the passenger
crossings.
rail, yes,
Yes,
passenger
yes, sir. The passenger rail crossings, I'm requesting our staff to really monitor, make sure that, I know that you gave me assurances, and I appreciate that, but we have some concerns. Crossing Guard has reported that children and pedestrians right around there, so that is concerning to us. The rail crossing at Victoria and Richardson in that immediate area needs to be improved. I know it's temporary,
Yes.
and I get that, but if you could.
Yes,
Mr.
we'll-
Charette, thank you.
Well, I have only one question right now, and it's really not related to CIP, and I probably can't get away with asking it because it relates to the last item that we've already voted on, but I'd like to just have one question answered, and that is what the amount in the asset forfeiture account is, and I don't know that I can find that quickly. Is that easily found?
Yes.
What's the number?
It's approximately $3 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'm listening to the previous council members and their fight for their wards, and I definitely appreciate hearing it because I've been sitting here fighting the same thing, and I am happy and excited and thank the staff for the CIP budget because there's several streets in the 6th Ward that are going to be paved. I'm excited about Pepper and Pepper Street going through Baseline through Mill Street. That is something that has been on the list for a long time, along with the design and the opening of State Street all the way to Baseline. And that was very important to me because that would keep the traffic out of the residential areas. The fight to get their kids to school, which is wonderful because they're trying to get their kids to school, but they're all in residential neighborhoods. So that opening up that street would just take a lot of the traffic out of the residential areas. So I appreciate the CIP plan that's proposed here. I support it, and I just want to thank the staff for working hard on it. Again, I'm excited about it. I just have one comment, not necessarily a question, but a comment. But can we start using some kind of different type of chemical or whatever you want to call it to pave the streets so that the potholes don't come back the next day? Maybe we're saving cost in the purchase of the product, but the product is costing us more money in the long run for having to go back and repave it the minute it rains. So if we could look into something that can save money like that, but be a better product.
Okay, Councilman Nickel.
Yeah, and again, I want to thank staff for your diligent work on this. Just a couple quick questions. I get asked about the status of the splash pad projects. Do we know what the status is on those?
Yes.
I know we have some that are not yet completed, but it looks like they're complete as far as the budget's concerned. What's the status on those?
It's in the budget. It's not completed. It's still ongoing in construction. The splash pad it's scheduled to be completed by the end of July.
The end of July?
Yes.
Okay.
We have 2 of them completed so far, and they're working the 3rd one, and then they're going to move to the 4th one after they're done.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, my view of a capital improvement budget is that this is really the infrastructure of our city. And a city is, as we've learned we had some good discussions about that, but a city is simply a built environment. So your infrastructure, ideally, you should have a city that's able to support its infrastructure. If you don't, you're going to fall into decay. And so I know we touched upon the discussion of fees. I would hope that we as a council, our staff, our community, that we really start to think about very critically now, how do we pay for this? Because to the comments that were brought up by my colleagues here, and they're absolutely right, much of our infrastructure is in desperate need of repair and upgrade. And so I would hope this next year we really start to look at how we use those advocacy dollars to bring home some of those monies that we're going to need. I know we've had some success, even this week. We've had some successes in Sacramento and elsewhere. I know the mayor will be in Sacramento on Thursday. I'll be in Sacramento on Friday. It's all hands on deck right now. And we need to make sure
Mr. Nickel, let me interrupt you just 10 seconds. Ms. Sanchez, where are you? Ms. Sanchez? Is she? We just had an election of our new planning commission, and I wanted to recognize the planning commission. They have been deliberating, and we appreciate our planning commissioners. Ms. Sanchez, we congratulate you, planning chairwoman. Few words.
Hello. Thank you for nominating me, for introducing me to this planning commission. I'm absolutely excited to continue with the projects. And I've just been elected chair. Anthony Jones is going to be my vice chair.
Wonderful.
We're excited to get started, and we'll actually kind of continue the good work that you guys are bringing forward.
Well, we're going to load the hopper so we can get our city back. And we're going to load the hopper to Planning Commission. And God bless you. We appreciate our Planning Commission. We thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're so excited.
Thank you. Councilman Nickel, I apologize.
No, and I want to congratulate our new chair. They have a lot of work too, and so given our budget, and I would just like to ask this very frank question: do we have a fee structure and a revenue structure that is sufficient to meet the needs of our capital improvements? And should we be really focused this next year on reassessing our fee structure? We brought up the truck traffic. I get that a lot from my residents up on the north end, that we have beneficiaries of our infrastructure that are not necessarily paying for the degradation that they are committing on our infrastructure. Is this something, and I know, and I don't want to put this on staff directly tonight, but is this a conversation we can start to have? Because I'll be honest, if we don't start to get this under control, I don't see how we get our infrastructure to a point where we're going to be attractive to the kinds of businesses and residents that we need to bring to this city to bring stability and fiscal sustainability back. So I'd like to get staff's input. Is our fee structure sufficient? And what are your thoughts going into this next fiscal year in terms of what we need to be thinking about to begin actively addressing that?
Those are all the things we'll be looking at that I told you we were going to bring back to you to consider. And certainly we can add truck fee to that and do some analysis on that, and fees, and as well as raising fees.
Okay. And then finally, was City Hall in here? Did I see something about City Hall in here? It's unfunded, okay, but it's still in there as a project. How does that process work in terms of if we got a project in there and at some point we want to pull it out? Is this the time that we need to do that?
You're saying if funding miraculously occurred, we would bring it back to you and appropriate that money towards that project.
Okay. But if we wanted to perhaps realign our priorities as a council in terms of getting the best bang for our buck, and I think that's part of my concern too, that every year we come back with these capital improvements. And I understand there's a lot of politics, there's a political dimension to this, but at the end of the day I want to make sure we're using limited money to improve those areas of the city that have the highest potential for growth and wealth generation, tax generation. Is that really guiding some of this? Is that part of the equation? Is that part of our thought process? And if not, how might we get to that point?
Excellent question. I think that Alex just went by the priority of needs based on the pavement infrastructure and the other needs that we have, but that certainly is something we should and could be looking at.
Because I'll be honest, my constituents are telling me, and these are from the 5th Ward, the North End, why aren't we improving the infrastructure around Carousel Mall? Why aren't we improving the infrastructure to really lay the table if we're really committed to developing this site? If we're really committed to developing our downtown, why aren't we committed to improving the infrastructure to support that type of development that we want to attract? And is that being considered?
As you know, we're going to be going out for an RFP soon, and once we have those proposals back from the developer and we have a plan, I think that's a great way to go about it. But once we have that plan in place and to be able to look
Because
for
I would
grant
like
funding
to
and
provide as a potential incentive, committing some of our capital improvement dollars to that area that will be developed. And I think we need to be very strategic and thoughtful about how we use these limited dollars to leverage the kind of growth and development and opportunity that we're going to need to grow out of the fiscal mess we're in.
Well, Mr. Nickel, to my point is, if we could sell that doggone landfill and make money, and then back out the $10 million that we're committed to it, I mean, that's seed money. I don't know if
Well, those are refuse funds, so they're limited. The funds that we were going to use for the vapor
our
control are
refuse.
refuse.
So it's
funds.
Prop 218
Correct.
protected.
Correct, yes.
Well, there's clever minds here that are going to outthink and use the legal process to make sure that we get it done.
Well, I will say there's also for transient-oriented development, which the mall, as you know, is, there's several grant sources available for that,
Right.
too, that we can look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to implore staff that we really, this year, I mean, we call this a status quo budget. I hate to say this, but there is nothing status quo about our budget this year. And we need to be extremely thoughtful and united as a council, as staff, as a community, to committing our dollars to the most effective uses possible to grow our revenue.
If you notice in the CIP, some of the streets repair that we are proposing is around downtown. Is because we believe that we wanted to revitalize downtown so we can bring businesses in and make it happening. So we start by, if you look at it, there is few streets that is within. In the matter of fact, in the next meeting, you will be approving a project to one segment of the road is Second Avenue from D Street all the way to Waterman. That's a big improvement for the area. So we are working in that area. We're trying as much as we can use our money to do the downtown.
All right, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Keisha, I really do appreciate it. I have several notes here, and I appreciate my staff that helped me and assisted me, especially Erica, for providing a lot of good context for my questions, and I appreciate your time. I do have just a final couple items here. On packet page 93 and 94, I think that is a very good comment that would it be possible for staff to drop a pin and map these so that we can share and post them somehow on our website? I would think it'd be pretty easy to do. I don't know if that's possible, but if we could.
Yes, we will work with Mitch, our IT director, and we'll have it happen. Yes.
It's about show and tell the people
problem.
that what we're doing with the money and what projects are planned. There is other various concerns that I had. I think they're typographical, but one that is glaring to me is on packet page 49. So on packet page 49, I saw it here. I think it's just it's a minor oversight. But if you read the staff report on 49, or you go into the project status update section midway, and it says pavement condition of Pepper Avenue. I think that was a copy and paste onto this, because if you notice, it's citywide medians for 900,000.
Oh, okay.
You see?
Okay, we'll fix that.
And so it's just a typo. But can we get a list? My point, the greater concern that I have is where's those project areas for the 900,000?
Okay.
Is where are we going to improve our citywide medians? My position has always been the main entry portals, University Parkway. I went up there the other day and I was concerned at the center medians on University Parkway. And so entry points of growth, of visitors coming into our city, 2nd Street, 5th Street, the main corridors, where are we putting that money, the citywide medians? So if staff could work with us on that, just provide some type of a scope?
Yes.
We'll bring that back to you for approval.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We appreciate, I noticed that we're already improving Second Street, East Street. I see some landscaping, some irrigation being completed, and we're grateful. So we thank you. All right. Are there any other comments, questions? All right. Is there a motion? Do you need a motion on this, or is this a receive and file?
Yeah, we just need direction from you. So we have direction on the budget. What we'll do is we'll incorporate those changes. I don't see any changes in the CIP other than those median projects that you want to approve separately from that. And we'll be bringing that back to you on June 19th for final approval for the budget hearing.
And some research questions on the landfill if there's opportunity.
If we have opportunity to answer those in time, we will.
Very good. All right, moving on to item number, I'm sorry. Yeah, item number 3 is a LRC. The LRC creation of the subcommittee. Is there a motion for approval of the recommendation?
I'll move to approve.
Second? Anybody? All right. Discussion? If not, members would please cast their vote.
Oh. And I'm still waiting for votes from, okay, Ms. Ibarra's gone, okay. So on item 3, the motion was made by Mr. Nickel, the second by Ms. Richard, and it passes 4-1 with Mr. Charette voting no.
Very good. This meeting is adjourned. We appreciate the attendance of our public. The next joint regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council will be held on Wednesday, June 19th. The council chambers located here at 201 Northeast Street. Closed session will begin at 5:30 p.m. and open session will begin at 7 p.m. Thank you for coming. Please drive home safely.